First tonight on our news live at 7, the opposition leader calling for a bipartisan select committee to deal with immigration issues. But first, the Prime Minister lays out government's plans to crack down on shanty towns through Operation Secure. And the 21-year-old man accused of threatening to kill Prime Minister Philip Davis appears in court. Then in our news at 7:30, police investigating a robbery at a fast food restaurant, and it was all caught on camera. Our news live at 7 starts now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. The man accused of threatening to kill Prime Minister Philip Davis is behind bars tonight after facing a judge today over the shocking allegations. We've got more from inside today's court hearing, but we begin with the latest from the Prime Minister's national address. In his 15-minute speech, Davis addressing the ongoing plans and policies to curb illegal migration. Megan Shepherd has the story.
The pillars of the CARICOM plan to address the Haitian migration crisis include coordinating a meeting with Haitian stakeholders to develop a plan to restore security and the rule of law, strengthening the capacity of the Haitian National Police, developing a plan to hold elections and restore a fully functioning Haitian government, and securing support from the international partners, including the Canadian government, which has committed to providing security assistance as well as millions of dollars in humanitarian assistance.
On the 10th of this month, the injunction preventing the demolition of shantytowns was lifted. The Prime Minister says this paved the way for the government to act, and since then, Operation Secure was launched.
The operation is focused on identifying irregular migrants, documented migrants, and Bahamians living in these communities, and addressing their status in a comprehensive and coordinated manner.
Davis says a zero-tolerance approach will be taken for all parties involved.
If you are a Crown landholder who is unlawfully leasing land, you will be prosecuted. If you are engaged in human smuggling, you will be prosecuted. And if you are employing migrants illegally, you will be prosecuted.
He gave this update as it relates to repatriations.
4,748 is the largest number of repatriations in a calendar year in our country's history. In 2023, already 1,024 persons have been repatriated. Since we came into office in September 2021, only one migrant vessel was able to land on an inhabited island.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
And hours after the Prime Minister's address, a 21-year-old man accused of threatening to kill the nation's leader has been remanded to prison. Isaac Roberts appeared before Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt on Monday to face a charge of threats of death. Prosecutors allege that Roberts called the Central Police Station this past Saturday and threatened the Prime Minister's life. Roberts has denied the allegation. Ferguson Pratt remanded him into custody until Thursday, when she's expected to hold a bail hearing. Investigators telling Our News on Sunday that they had taken a man into custody and seized a device as evidence. This latest incident follows threats from two anonymous callers around noon back on February 3rd. The callers, believed to be men, phoned the office of the Prime Minister, prompting heightened security ahead of the 44th regular meeting of CARICOM heads of government. Police announcing last week they were questioning a 58-year-old man from Carmichael Road in connection with those threats. We will continue to follow this. Be sure and stay tuned to ournews.bs for all the latest. Meanwhile, opposition MPs pushing for the formation of a select committee to address the country's ongoing immigration challenge. As Berthany McDermott reports tonight, the Free National Movement leader is saying that doing the same just won't work.
The opposition leader says failure to seize this moment could result in deeper consequences that could damage the quality of life throughout the country. Pintard saying the opposition believes there remains a small window of opportunity to address the vexing immigration issue. He outlined the critical items the select committee should examine.
There is a need for us to do a thorough examination of our border security.
The Bahamas has long grappled with illegal immigration. Over the years, Bahamians were forced to deal with the growth of shantytowns and the growing number of migrants coming to Bahamian shores. Last month, 400 Haitian nationals were apprehended in Bahamian waters as that country faced political and economic hardship. Pintard says immigration must be managed well.
To carry out a complete audit of all current work permit holders and the persons for whom they are employed to ensure that the persons holding the work permits are working in the location that they are designated to work.
The FNM leader says doing more of the same will not work. He was quick to add there is also no room for discrimination.
There is no place or space in bringing resolution to this issue for those preaching hatred, xenophobia, vigilantism, or racism.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Thanks, Berthany. And former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis calling for a probe into last week's protests that ended in chaos just ahead of the 44th regular meeting of CARICOM heads. Dr. Minnis pointing to protests at other gatherings, including the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings.
I think the police would have made some errors in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of movement, allowing the protests, etc. You must remember that Shogam under Sir Lyndon Pinling, there were mass protests with Shogam, but yet Pinling and his government allowed individuals freedom of speech and allowed them to protest. There's been many allegations made against the police, and investigation that needs to be investigated and dealt with appropriately.
Coalition of Independence members protested last week Wednesday. 18 people, including COI leader Lincoln Bain, were subsequently arrested and made an initial court appearance on Friday. Dr. Minnis says the implications of the protest were far-reaching.
Individuals for schools were delayed 1 to 2 hours. Individuals for the workplace were delayed 2 to 3 hours. That would have had some impact not on the job situation, but impact on the economy also. And by the following day, obviously, they had corrected, but that's a matter that needs to be investigated.
Much more to get to in our news, including a tragic car crash early this morning, as well as the search for a teen who escaped from the Simpson Penn Center for Boys over the weekend. But for now, meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with your first look at temperatures across the islands. Greg?
I ain't going to 5, I can just go. Warm evening outside our studios right now. Temperatures are in the mid-70s, 76 with a few clouds. Your winds are out of the southeast at 7 miles per hour. Your feels like temperature, comfortable 75 degrees. Temperatures around the islands tonight. Right now it's 76 in Freeport, Grand Bahama, also in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, 78 in Allenstown, Bimini. We pick up 77s in Great Harbor Key and in Nicholstown, Andros. Over in Governor's Harbor, 76 also here in the capital. Central Bahamas, 76 in Kemps Bay. We pick up a 77 in Arthurstown, Cat Island. Georgetown and Deadman's Key, all 78s. And Coburn Town, San Salvador, 75. Southeast Bahamas, 79, Duncantown, Ragged Island. We pick up 78s in Kern Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, also in Abrahams Bay. Our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Island, 78. And deep south, Matthewtown, Inagua, you guys are 79 at this hour. Satellite-wise, nothing happening across us. We have some high-level clouds moving from the northwest to southeast across the northwest Bahamas. Not going to produce any rainfall, but high pressure remains in charge of our weather, and that's going to continue to be with us for at least the week as our temperatures take a little bit of a rise. They should be in the mid-80s by the middle of the week. Overnight low temperatures will be in the low 70s. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Our news will tell you how much the Davis administration has spent on increments associated with labor agreements. And growing pains as roadworks expand on New Providence. We'll tell you how you can stay in the know as the work continues. But first, the search for a teen who escaped the Simpson Penn Center for Boys. That's coming up when our news returns. An early morning accident claiming the life of a motorist after police say his compact car crashed into a wall. The deadly accident happening around 1:45 this morning. Police say the man was driving a white Honda Civic south along East Street when he lost control and crashed into a business. Police say the man died on the scene. This as police are looking for a teen who escaped from the Simpson Penn Center for Boys over the weekend. Police say the 17-year-old Adelaide Village resident escaped between 6 p.m. on Saturday and 7 a.m. Sunday. There have been several escapes at the center in recent years, one of the biggest happening back in October 2018 when 13 boys managed to breach security. If you have any information on this latest escape, you are asked to contact the Criminal Investigations Department at 502-9991 or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. And we are learning about the $18 million in taxpayer money that the Davis administration has spent on increments since taking office. It's got government touting the record number of labor agreements completed since coming to office. The news coming from State Public Service Minister Pierre Glover-Roll, who was responding to questions from the opposition in Parliament today.
The government has estimated that the annualized incremental additional costs associated with the labor agreements that we have completed since coming to office is $18 million. We honored our commitment to public sector employees when we came to office, and we brought much overdue relief to scores of workers, including teachers, nurses, doctors, and other public sector employees.
Glover-Roll adding that the figure falls within the current budget with provisions for $20 million for labor agreements. The state minister was also asked how the projected cost of these labor agreements align with the reduction in public service staff related costs that were outlined in the 2021 fiscal strategy report.
The government forecasted a growth in public sector wages over the medium term from $863.9 million in financial year 2023-2024 to $941.7 million in financial year 2026-2027.
Well, Ministry of Works officials are looking to get ahead of the inconveniences predicted with the Gladstone Road Improvement Project. We've got more on this in tonight's Work in Progress segment. Are on the drawing board for the road corridor that connects Southwest New Providence motorists to John F. Kennedy Drive. The road has long outgrown the 2 lanes and even poses several risks for drivers who attempt to overtake into oncoming traffic. If you want to learn more about this, mark your calendars. If you live in the Tall Pines, Carmichael, Golden Isles, Southern Shores, and Killarney constituencies, you are invited to a town hall meeting next Tuesday, February 28th at 6 p.m. at the National Training Center on Gladstone Road. Especially if you live or have a business in that area, you're invited to come out and see what is expected and, of course, ask questions. When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as more arrests are expected in Suriname after a round of riots over the president's policies. Plus, the Turks and Caicos premier discusses opportunities for the diaspora interested in returning to the islands. And later, a Bahamian team queen jets off to an international pageant with the goal to bring home the crown. We've got the details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. United States President Joe Biden making an unannounced visit to Ukraine on Monday, just days before the first anniversary of Russia's invasion. Biden with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a defiant display of Western solidarity as the country is still fighting what Biden called a brutal and unjust war. The visit comes as Biden is trying to keep allies unified in their support for Ukraine as the war is expected to intensify with spring offensives.
I bring greetings and goodwill from the members of Congress, and you made a very good impression, as you know, when you spoke there last. And for all the disagreement we have in our Congress on some issues, there is significant agreement on support for Ukraine, because this is so much larger than just Ukraine. It's about freedom and democracy in Europe. It's about freedom and democracy writ large.
Another earthquake struck the border region of Turkey and Syria on Monday, just 2 weeks after the area was devastated by a larger quake which killed more than 47,000 people and destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes. Monday's quake, with a magnitude of 6.3, was centered near a southern Turkish city and was felt in Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon. The country's Disaster and Emergency Management Authority says the death toll is expected to climb further, with 385,000 apartments known to have been destroyed and many people still missing. And hundreds of rescuers in Brazil searching for survivors of landslides and flooding on Monday that killed at least 36 people along the coast of Sao Paulo. The search and rescue effort follows a huge weekend downpour, as officials say another 40 people are still missing. A statement from government officials says more than 1,700 people have been displaced. And finally, in news from the region, Suriname's government warning of more arrests as police have been put on high alert since Saturday following a protest against the policies of President Chadwick Prasad Santoki. Reports say the protests, which spun out of control, saw hundreds of demonstrators storm the Surinamese parliament to protest against price hikes and the reduction of electricity and fuel subsidies as a result of an International Monetary Fund program. The group overwhelmed police, who fired tear gas, causing damage to the assembly building.
This segment of the news is brought to you by H.G. Christie in Grand Bahama, celebrating over 100 years of service in the Bahamas.
Turks and Caicos Islands Premier Charles Mizik hosting a reception this weekend for Grand Bahamians with roots in TCI. Mizik, who was in the country for the 44th regular meeting of CARICOM heads of government, shared that there are a number of opportunities for members of the diaspora interested in returning to the islands. During the well-attended event, he admitted that a side effect of TCI's fast-growing economy is a bit of a housing crunch, but he says even with the challenge, there is still opportunity.
There are challenges. One of the biggest challenges we have is housing. Serious housing in TCI is extremely expensive, particularly in Providenciales, and that's because there's such a housing crunch. We're going to need 600 houses a year for the next 10 years at least. So those of you who are in the development, construction, financing area, we're not only asking people to come back and look for job opportunities, but also investment opportunities. And the government have incentive programs that would make it easy for you to engage in business.
Still to come on our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was February 20th and the birthday of a Bahamian screen legend. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. It's all coming up when our news continues. Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was February 20th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history, in 1840, an act for regulating the police of the Bahama Islands was tabled in the House of Assembly. The act came into effect 2 weeks later on March 1st and established the police of the Bahama Islands, now known as the Royal Bahamas Police Force. The first Inspector General of the force was John Tinker, who commanded 16 men who volunteered for duty. The Historical Society notes most, if not all, of the recruits were probably former slaves, and the first headquarters was located on Parliament Street. Then in 1927, the late Sidney Poitier was born in Miami, Florida. Poitier, who died last January, was a Bahamian-American television and film legend. In 1963, he became the first African-American actor and actor of Bahamian descent to win an Oscar at the Academy Awards for his role in the film Lilies of the Field. He was also a director, author, civil rights activist, and former Bahamian ambassador to Japan. In 2012, the second bridge connecting New Providence to Paradise Island was named the Sir Sidney Poitier Bridge. Then in 2014, then Member of Parliament for Tall Pines, Leslie Miller, made controversial remarks in the House of Assembly regarding government's treatment of fishermen in the Bahamas. Miller compared the administration's treatment to the way an abusive husband treats a wife or girlfriend. He went on to say he was once in such a relationship. Some MPs laughed at Miller's comments while others criticized. He later clarified his remarks, saying his comments were made in jest and that at no time in his life had he ever abused a woman. A few weeks later, Miller attempted to make a $1,000 donation to the Crisis Center, which was rejected. And finally, on this day in 2017, the Bahamas played host to the Confederation of North, Central America and Caribbean Association Football CONCACAF. The tournament was held at the newly built National Beach Soccer Arena at Malcolm Park on East Bay Street. The competition, which ran from the 20th to the 26th, ended with a win for Panama's team, who defeated Mexico in the final 4-2. Well, the latest queen to represent the country is off to Spain to attend her first international pageant. Our Joshua Williams spoke with her just before she jetted off this morning.
17-year-old Penelope Lightbourne is off to Madrid, Spain to represent the Bahamas in the Miss Teen Universe pageant. She says she's excited to represent the Bahamas and has already begun doing the groundwork.
In light of my platform, which is autism awareness, I've partnered with Sunflower Program, which is a program that hands out lanyards to persons with disabilities to make sure that their stay at the airport and traveling is more comfortable and safer for them.
Lightbourne, who was crowned last July, is an influencer with a large social media following of over 30,000 people. She encourages young ladies to simply be themselves.
If you want to be just like me, don't, okay? Just remember to be confident. I was never this confident like a couple months back. Just make sure to be yourself and know that you're beautiful and that you're intelligent, and just put in the work and you can be as confident and as beautiful as you strive to be.
The Miss Teen Universe pageant is scheduled for February 22 to March 1st. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, we're certainly wishing her all the best. Thanks for that, Joshua. To watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. That's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is our Megan Shepherd, who is in for Talia Hall. Megan's got the latest headlines. Megan, you strike me as a Miss Bahamas. Were you ever in any of those pageants?
I was asked to be in a few pageants. I declined. I'm not sure the discipline was my calling.
It's a lot.
Exactly.
It's like an intense boot camp, really?
Yeah, the whole gym and working out thing.
Yeah.
Not my calling. Stay in my lane.
All right. News is good. News is good.
Yes. Thanks, Ken. Well, we are following proceedings in the House of Assembly at this hour, and why the former Prime Minister is asking for a timeline on an immigration solution.
New tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. A former Prime Minister says Bahamians need to know the timeline for action on shantytowns and other immigration crackdown efforts. Plus, we'll tell you why 2 attorneys were disbarred by the disciplinary tribunal. And police need your help in solving a robbery at a McDonald's restaurant over the weekend. And later, trouble brewing as the union representing electrical workers calls out government on unresolved issues.
This is Our News. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Megan Shepard. Former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis labeling last night's national address on immigration as lackluster. Dr. Minnis says the PM's address didn't hit the points Bahamians needed to hear. Our Sasha Lightbourne reports.
I was very disappointed. I and the Bahamian people were looking for solutions. What was he going to do with the shanty town since the injunction has been lifted? They're mixed and they're confused. They give the impression that they don't want to touch it, but Bahamian people want a solution.
That was former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis sharing his initial reaction to Prime Minister Philip Davis's national address on immigration. You may recall that the initial injunction to stop the demolition of shantytowns in the country came under the Minnis administration after a Shantytown Action Task Force was formed to tackle the issue. Dr. Minnis says the address simply missed the mark.
In the case of Abaco, there was one entrance in the shantytown. We were manning those with police and defense force. We were putting within the shantytown itself mobile police stations so as to deal with that. Individuals entering the shantytown, you obviously would have had access to them. So you knew who were legal and who were not legal.
The former Prime Minister believes part of the problem is the laws with regards to building structures in the country.
There's a collapse of the legal system with respect to building. You cannot have two laws. One, for the illegals, they can build. They have their own commerce within the shanty town. They have restaurants, they have bars, everything within there. So it's a commerce outside of our commerce.
And he shared these strong words on the matter.
We will deal with the illegal immigrants in a humane manner, but they must go. They must go, and the shanty towns must likewise be demolished.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
Now, when the government starts demolishing shanty towns around the country, people who call them home will have to relocate at their own expense. That's according to Prime Minister Philip Davis, who made the announcement during his national address on immigration. Today, we asked Housing Minister JoBeth Colby Davis whether her ministry would be getting involved. She had this response.
The deliberations will be similar to what we would have done when we were trying to assist the families in Abaco. So that is a cooperative effort between the Office of the Prime Minister and Social Service and Housing and any other ministry that the Prime Minister or Cabinet deems fit to work along with, making sure that we assist those persons, those citizens who would be in need. I'm not certain I would say that the bulk of the responsibility would be on housing.
Meanwhile, Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers says the Shantytown Task Force has been reinstated, adding that a comprehensive plan is to come. His comments come after the Prime Minister announced a plan to address the country's immigration challenges and after Supreme Court Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson lifted the injunction blocking the demolition of shanty towns. Contributing to the debate on the formation of a select committee to address immigration in Parliament this evening, Sayers called on citizens to join in on the fight against illegal immigration. This is a story we will continue to follow. Meantime, two attorneys are no longer on the call list of lawyers allowed to practice in the Bahamas. Those lawyers are former PLP Member of Parliament for 8 Mile Rock, Pleasant Bridgewater, and Raymond Roll. In the case of Bridgewater, the complaint stemmed from her receipt of funds for sale of a property in Grand Bahama. However, the person involved alleged Bridgewater failed to pay for stamp tax, record or transfer documents, and failed to account for the funds. The disciplinary tribunal found that Bridgewater was guilty of improper conduct in contravention of the Legal Profession Act. In the case of Roll, a former Free National Movement candidate for Anglerston, the complainant stated the attorney received funds for the acquisition of land in Rum Key. The judgment says there was fraud within the attorney's firm, resulting in the forgery of signatures on conveyance documents for the sale. The disciplinary tribunal found that the attorney was guilty of improper conduct in contravention of the Legal Profession Act and ordered that Roll's name be struck from the roll. Both Roll and Bridgewater represented themselves and can appeal the decision.
Police investigating an armed robbery that occurred yesterday shortly after 7 a.m. Investigators say a dark purple Nissan Cube drove up to a drive-through window. One of the occupants climbed through that window and pointed a gun at the cashier, who then fled. While attempting to move cash from the register, another employee struck the suspect with an object, but the suspect was able to remove an undisclosed amount of cash and escape. A video believed to be of this incident went viral over the last few hours. Investigations into this matter continue. Armed robbery investigations have been opened in two separate incidents that occurred on Sunday. The first happening at 1:20 p.m. in the Carmichael Road area. Police say two masked gunmen entered the business and demanded cash. The manager complied and the suspects escaped in a dark-colored Nissan Cube. The second incident happened at 4:30 p.m. in the Burnett Road area. According to reports, a masked gunman held up a business in that area before escaping on a motorcycle. Investigations into both matters continue. And beautiful conditions outside the Our News studios this evening. Meteorologist Greg Thompson has our first look at weather. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Megan, and welcome everybody for a quick check on weather. It's pretty nice on the outside right now. Temperatures are in the mid-70s, 76 with few clouds. Very comfortable on the outdoors if you have plans. The winds out of the south-southeast at 7 miles per hour, and your feels like temperature hanging out in the mid-70s as well. Satellite view, high pressure ridge in charge, kept us sunny for most of the day and warm. Some high-level clouds moving in from the northwest towards the southeast. That's not going to produce any form of rainfall. But that high pressure will continue to dominate our weather for the next several days with some very warm temperatures and dry conditions. That's your first check on weather. Stick with us. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, the Works Minister reveals how much money has been advanced in Bahamas Power and Light. Plus, tensions are rising at the Electrical Workers Union. We'll tell you why straight ahead. And later, steps to protect consumers from rising prices. That's coming up when Our News returns. Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers says around $50 million has been advanced to Bahamas Power and Light by way of a loan. Responding to questions from the official opposition today, Sayers said the government topped up an existing loan facility entered into in 2019 and 2021 at $100 million. Sayers making it clear the money was not a subsidy.
This is not a subsidy, but a top-up of the existing facilities by way of a loan which was entered into in 2019 and 2021. The present value of the facility is pegged at $100 million. To date, approximately $50 million advanced to BPL by way of a loan.
The official opposition also asking if delaying the increase caused Bahamians to pay more. To that, Sayers responded this way.
The overall costs by Bahamians would remain the same regardless of the rate of recovery, as the fuel costs are a direct pass-through. However, the monthly fuel charge, as in the case of the recently announced glide path schedule rates, is dependent on the period set for the recovery.
Unresolved issues prompting the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union to hold a press conference this morning. The union's president telling reporters that the issues at Bahamas Power and Light are long-standing, and it sounds like for now nothing is off the table. Marlena Leonard has more in this report.
Unresolved pension issues, disagreements on medical benefits, and disrespect are just some of the things Bahamas Electrical Workers Union President Kyle Wilson lists as issues with Bahamas Power and Light, leading the union to call a press conference.
There currently exists in BPL many concerns of the workers that seem to be passed over, unacknowledged, ignored, and dragged out for far too long, despite the many letters and requests by the union and its legal counsel to meet and resolve them.
The Bahamas Electrical Workers Union last signed an industrial agreement with BPL in September of 2021, and a month earlier had signed a memorandum of understanding with the Progressive Liberal Party just before the general election. Wilson had this to say in response to whether or not he felt the government had held up their side of the agreement.
No, I'm not saying they're not fulfilling the MOU. I'm talking about BPL specifically. I'm proud of that document. But what I'm saying is I'm ashamed of how they're treating it in BPL. And so if I'm facing an engineer of that, I stand by that and I'm standing on it. And I'm asking BPL to show respect to what has been signed and agreed to how we handle unions.
The press conference was attended by representatives from several unions, including the Bahamas Hotel Managerial Association, the Bahamas Electrical Utility Management Union, the Bahamas Nurses Union, Union of Public Officers, and the Bahamas General Workers Union. When asked if industrial action is on the table, Wilson tells us everything is on the table, but was hesitant to set a timeline.
I have proven before. I don't want to prove it again, okay? The members are saying, Kyle, we're ready now. But I'm saying to the members, I'm trying to hold back. Give me time to work with them. And I want to be assured that all options are exhausted before we get to do what many of the members are right now willing to do.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Thanks, Marlena. As the Bahamas Taxi Cab Union continues to slam what they are calling the oversaturation of taxi cab plates in the industry, Transport Minister JoBeth Colby Davis was asked to confirm how many plates were distributed since coming to office. To that, Colby Davis said the process is still ongoing. The question came during question and answer time in Parliament.
The government of the Bahamas intends to modernize the transportation sector. A critical component of this goal is to bring long overdue changes to the distribution of taxi plates and to empower Bahamians. As the Minister of Transport and Housing, I wish to advise the opposition that the process is not complete and remains in progress. Additionally, as the month of May is the period of renewal of franchises for taxi and livery plates, it would be improper for the Minister to confirm an exact number at this time.
Spending too much money at the grocery store? While the Consumer Affairs and Price Control Unit is beefing up its efforts to combat overpricing, our Joshua Williams has the details.
Government is stepping up its efforts to protect consumers. Officials from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, in particular the Consumer Affairs Inspectorate, are putting in measures to ensure that residents are safeguarded. Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkitis says the first step is tightening legislation.
We have in draft form a Consumer Affairs Amendment Bill where we're just looking to strengthen provisions for consumers whether they are the recipient of services or goods to ensure that, for example, when they have difficulty, they have somewhere where they can come and lodge their complaint and have their complaint heard. And so that's on the agenda.
Chief Price Inspector Reno Smith says while most businesses have been in compliance with price control regulations, there are some, especially on the Family Islands, who seek to take advantage of inflation experienced in the United States. He says consumers should be aware of the power they possess.
We try to educate consumers to let them know that the power is in the hand or in the pocket of their wallet. And so if you go into the food store and they have something outrageously priced, you have the power to walk out. If you don't have to feel compelled. And so we saw that working for us in Grand Bahama, where persons refuse to pay $20 for 3 romaine letters. And so now it's down to 4 something.
Those business owners who do not comply with the regulations set can be fined up to $5,000 or face 3 months in prison. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, the Executive Director of Bahamas Information Services reflects on coverage of last week's CARICOM meetings on New Providence.
Plus, coming up in sports for you tonight, Grand Bahama basketball, high school basketball heating up as the championship's underway. We'll give you some details on that. We'll also tell you how the UB Mingos men's basketball did in tournament play in Florida. And of course, the latest breakdown from local volleyball. That's all ahead in sports.
And the perfect spot to put creativity on display. We'll tell you where you can find it when our news continues. This is our news. Welcome back. Consumer affairs and price control officials are aware of a number of issues on the Family Islands, in particular Abaco, where complaints have surfaced of high rent on the island. Chief Price Inspector for Consumer Affairs Reno Smith explains.
Right now, the major complaint in Abaco we are faced with is rent control. We have a young lady there who's renting an unfurnished one-bedroom efficiency at $1,000 a month. That's unacceptable. So no one is there to police rent control or any other consumer concern at this time. And so we need to get our officers back in Abaco.
Smith says the offices were destroyed as a result of Hurricane Dorian back in 2019 and need to be staffed once again.
Since the Hurricane Dorian, we lost all of our employees who didn't resign, relocated to Nassau, and as a result, there's no one to police the Abaco market at this time. We're hoping that in short order, the powers that be would be able to empower me once again to go and conduct interviews and hire some staff members for Abaco.
Well, the 44th regular meeting of CARICOM had many moving parts, and while it came to an end on Friday, the media played a critical role in the dissemination of information. Leading media relations for the government was Bahamas Information Services. BIS Executive Director Diana Swan says working with the media was an awesome experience.
Bringing together local media was also great for me. I got to meet the younger journalists, the younger videographers and photographers who are now in the industry. And then working along with the international media, that was at a different level. And all I asked for was cooperation, and I got it, especially from my local media, my colleagues. I enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity. But to see them go after the story and to see the interviews that they wanted, I know that as far as the media is concerned, we're on the right track in this country.
The next meeting for the regional body is expected to take place in July in Dominica. Swan, who is a journalist by profession, explains why so few regional media attended.
There were quite a number of them, but they came in as press secretaries to the heads. And so once they play a dual role or played a dual role, and then again, you know, with modern technology the way it is and Bahamas Information Services being able to provide them streaming as well as photographs, there was no need for some to travel. And if you remember correctly, at the first news conference, the opening news conference that we had, there was a Zoom section. And so that's the way the world is moving now.
And now the latest from Grand Bahama High School Basketball Championships and the New Providence Volleyball Association Championship. Meanwhile, the UB Mingos men's basketball team continue their Florida tour. Here's our Marcellus Hall with the highlights.
All right, thanks a lot, Megan. Welcome to Our Sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. It was a busy weekend. Lots of things going on. Let's start off with some high school basketball out of Grand Bahama. The Grand Bahama High School Basketball Championships taking place just as the weekend began. Let's give you a breakdown of how it all turned out. Over in Grand Bahama, the GBSSSA getting ready to get things going. The Obie Wilshcombe Derek Nesbitt Senior Boys Basketball Championships on the line. Tabernacle Baptist Academy, they went up against their opponents, and I tell you what, this one turned out to be pretty good. Sunland Baptist trying to fight their way through it, and it was Tabernacle Baptist getting the win here, 54-46. And deciding game 3 is Tabernacle wins it 2-1. Aiden Miller, he was named the Championship Series MVP. Braylon McDonald, Championship Defensive Player of the Series, and Coach of the Championship Series, Coach Kevin Clark. And finally, the New Providence Volleyball Association, they continued with championship action this past weekend here in New Providence. 2 games, both ladies and men, being played over at the Anatole Rogers Gym. And tell you what, there were some pretty good games here. This is how it went down for you, in case you're wondering. Just a quick rundown of all the action here. On the ladies' side, here's how it looked. It was the Panthers beating the Johnson Spikers 3-1, 25-23, 25-13, 26-28, and 25-12 as the Panthers get the win. Meanwhile, on the men's side, Warhawks and defenders going at it again. 3-1 ends up being your tally. Warhawks taking the win there as they get done 25-17. 22-25, 25-13, and 27-25. And there it is, a check on sports here on this Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Megan.
Still ahead on Our News Tonight, creativity comes alive at Echo at Bahamas. Our Marlena Leonard explores the space, coming up tonight. Plus, Greg is back in the Weather Center with your extended weather forecast. Stay with us. Welcome back to Our News. It may be shaping up to be quite a pleasant week for weather. Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Megan, and welcome back, everybody, for our final check of weather. Dome of high pressure remains the dominant weather feature across us, and that high pressure is parked right across Cuba and the Bahamas. Going to keep all the weather systems towards the north, but that dome of high pressure will be responsible for very dry conditions, cloud-free skies, so we're looking for some very warm temperatures over the next couple of days. Temperatures should get near the mid-80s. We could possibly see some of those temperatures rising into the upper 80s. That high will slide out slowly towards the east by the end of the week, but we won't see much in terms of any significant weather throughout the remainder of the week, so do get out and enjoy. You might even take in some beaching over the next several days. Nothing much happening on our future radar. Some spotty showers across the area, but all in all, it's going to remain dry with very little immeasurable rainfall. And as I mentioned, those temperatures will take a kind of a rise over the next several days. Boating conditions, very nice for the next couple of days as well. Your winds will be out of the southeast to southwest across the northwest and central Bahamas. 10 knots, but they will fall light and variable at times. Seas running 1 to 3 feet over the ocean. Your high tide will be at 8 p.m. tonight. For the southeast Bahamas, east to south easterly flow at 10 to 15 knots expected. And your wave heights running 2 to 4 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, dry weather, mostly sunny conditions. Temperatures will rise into the low to mid 80s. We could, like I said, see some even upper 80s over the next couple of days, but nothing in terms of any rainfall expected throughout the period. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
And
And finally in news tonight, don't you wish you had a venue where you could host a cocktail party while watching artists work on their next masterpiece? Well, don't stop there. While you're having that cocktail party, some of the island's best musicians play in the background. Well, Bahamas, the current Echo venue offers just that. Our Marlena Leonard got an inside look on how the space is taking NASA's creatives by storm.
The Current's new extension, Echo, opened in Bahamas in October of 2022, and it's still a constantly evolving space. Even their display wall is able to move around the gallery, allowing them to be more creative. Speaking of creative, Bahamas Executive Director for Arts and Culture, John Cox, tells us the space has also become a popular venue among creatives in the nation's capital.
One cool thing about Echo is that, we have the Bahamas Resort Foundation, and there's 3 pillars in that foundation. It's conservation, community, and culture. And so I and my team are responsible for the cultural component of that. And how we go about doing that is we form relationships with kind of agencies or institutions that already kind of have significant programming going on. So for us, as it relates to theater, Shakespeare in Paradise has been going on for many, many years. So we actually hosted one of their productions here last month.
And they only plan to expand from there, considering moving beyond live performance to films.
And then we have the Culinary and Arts Festival that happened last year. So this year, when we do that, Echo is going to be a central part of how that whole experience plays out.
Cox says it's all part of trying to stay ahead of the cutting edge of global trends while also catering and uplifting local artists. If you're interested in some of the adult or kid art classes or upcoming events, you can visit Instagram The Current Echo for frequent updates and information. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Thanks for that, Marlena, and thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. Remember, you can find all of today's top stories at ournews.bs and share all of your favorites right there from the Our News Bahamas Facebook page. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Megan Shepard. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a safe and wonderful evening.